Welcome back to the Moonflower Show.
Hi, welcome.
How's it going? Are you doing good? How are you feeling?
Let us know in the...
I'm trying to do a wholehearted check-in, and you're just letting us know in the comments.
Yeah, well, I want to know. I'm genuinely... That's the only way that they can let us know.
They could email us.
Isn't that, like, kind of a form of comment?
Yes, I guess so. Let us know in the comments by emailing us. Today we're talking about how to be positive with several caveats.
Asterisk.
How to be positive without being toxically positive in a world where there are a lot of problems, real problems.
Mm-hmm.
Real reasons to feel and be negative about things.
Yeah. It's pretty easy to just, like, close your eyes and think about everything that's going unideally.
Yes, and it's also maybe not easy, but you can also close your eyes and just pretend it's all not happening. And I don't think that either of those things are really the answer.
No.
And, I think what partially inspired my interest in this topic for me is all this discourse about toxic positivity. Because on the one hand, I think that toxic positivity exists, and I do think that it's a problem. At the same time, I think that positivity and some of the lessons that we can learn from looking at the bright side of things and finding the good are really valuable, and to dismiss those valuable things just because there are some kinds of positivity that are toxic doesn't do anybody a service. Right.
The point is that negative emotions shouldn't be seen as something to be dismissed, Right. Negative emotions are a real response to real problems that are healthy to have. And obviously, if you are experiencing patterns of negative emotions that are like debilitating or you feel like you can't escape them, then it's time to find some way to relieve yourself of that. But if every time you're feeling negatively about something, you're just trying to flip it on its head and be like, well, I can just look at the bright side, or like, I shouldn't even worry about this, that's when you start to get into the realm of toxic positivity.
Yeah. I think there's a healthy balance, and partially what it looks like is acknowledging the reality of the situation, whatever that looks like, but also understanding that there is truth and then there is your subjective experience, and the latter you do have some control over. So if you're having a really bad day, like for example, you should process however you're feeling about it. You shouldn't just bury your negative emotions about it and not deal with them. But probably the best thing to do is to find a way to release that, maybe through writing or talking to somebody, or find some sort of release, right? And then it still is up to you how you want to proceed with the rest of your day. It still is up to you. Being against toxic positivity doesn't mean that you're obligated to continue having a shitty time when you're already having a shitty time.
Yeah.
It's okay to start feeling better. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I feel like I mistakenly internalized that message. I was like, oh, well, if I start feeling good, then I'm being toxically positive. And that's not good either. Right, yeah. Yeah.
And I do feel like in our current zeitgeist or whatever, there is this idea that your happiness in any form is always detracting from somebody else's happiness.
Yeah.
And you should leave those positive feelings for somebody else and go empathize with some of the horrible things that are going on. How could you be happy about something at a time like this?
Yeah.
That's not helpful either.
Yeah, you're allowed to be happy. And I don't think that what you were describing is explicitly said either. Like, I don't think that anybody says, like, oh, how are you being happy at a time like this? But you think of... It's really hard to put your finger on this, especially because it's not being explicitly stated anywhere.
Yeah, but it's like implied, you know?
Yeah, you know? Like, with all of the due care to social issues, right? Yeah. I feel like, for example, this is a good example. During COVID, I felt relieved that I didn't have to go to work. I felt relieved that I didn't have to interact with people as much. I felt grateful for the silver lining, right? But every time that I talk about that, I feel like I have to add a caveat that's like, and of course COVID is horrible, and of course people have died, and like, of course, like, I empathize, and it's like horrible, it's a horrible situation. And it's like, well, can't I just state that I feel grateful for the positives that came to me as a result of this situation without bending over backwards to add caveat after caveat to explain, like, you know, why COVID is bad.
Yeah.
I think that's an example. And I do think that people are pressured. Like, I think that there are a lot of people who feel really relieved from, like, social pressures and who felt relieved, that, you know, because they could work from home and they got to spend more time with their families.
Yeah.
But I think that expressing that relief, there's, like, pressure to express it with, like, acknowledgement of the, you know, horrendous nature of the pandemic. And it absolutely was horrendous.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. You know, I feel that pressure now.
Yeah, even so far into the situation, like, what's it been, 2 years now going on? I think that the big part that you briefly mentioned that's important is processing everything that's happening rather than just brushing it off and distracting yourself. Allow yourself to feel the negative emotions about what's going on. Ask yourself. Take a moment to ask yourself why you're feeling good or bad about something. And don't try to justify it with, like, why you should or shouldn't be feeling good about something. Like, I shouldn't feel good about this because me, like, I'm making a lot of money, but I shouldn't feel good about that because, you know, I am taking money and opportunities away from other people who need it more. You can recognize that and still be happy about it because you don't have complete control over every situation.
Yeah.
But you can come to terms with the reality. You can come to terms with the unfortunate stuff and still feel happy and thankful for things.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that, like, especially about making money and taking opportunities away from people, I think that, like, what was I going to say about this? There was a point that I wanted to make and now it's totally escaping me.
It'll come back to you. Another big thing is, like, pressuring people pressure each other to stay, like, informed. Oh yeah. And I think that's just, like, it's really toxic in a way because we talked about this while planning the episode. Neither of us really, like, watch the news TM. Yeah. Like sit down in front of a television and watch, like, a news network, like, tell you about all the, like, things that they've decided to update you on in the world.
And, like, not only that, but I've made a point to stay away from social media this year. And I don't get any paper newspapers. I don't really, like, Google the news, you know. And so most of the news that I get is from word of mouth. Most of the news that I get is from, you know, the occasion that I'm on social media, just popping in to see what's going on. Yeah. Or, like, people will tell me about things that are going on. And there have been moments when I've gotten criticized for that.
Yeah.
And on the one hand, I do think it's important to stay informed, because that is important for a democracy, you know?
Yes.
But on the other hand, even for issues that concern me, right? There is a lot of news that doesn't concern me. There's a lot of vacuous stuff that's neither like good or bad that I just don't want to see. Like, I don't need to know what celebrities are doing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that stuff, it's like, whatever. I don't think anybody pressures us to see that. There's a lot of stuff that is a big deal politically, but that doesn't really impact my day-to-day life, right? And I see that there is a privilege there, but I also like want to push back on that a little bit, because I don't even want to hear about news about trans stuff. I don't want to hear about trans laws. I don't want to hear about Roe v. Wade getting overturned. You know? Maybe this is me just giving up politically, or maybe it's me becoming apathetic politically, but I don't care. And that's not to say that I don't care about the impact, but like, there is so little that I can do. There is so little that even collectively we can do.
Yes.
You know? That I'm not willing to spend the emotional energy worrying about that stuff.
Right, because it doesn't help you and it doesn't help anybody else.
Exactly.
And, like, even if you're getting together with people and discussing the issue and all coming to the same conclusion about it, you've probably had a good discussion, but you're left with the same problem and no real solution. Perhaps if you have the means to organize and you know, work towards actually making a change, that's when it starts to become worth discussing and worth paying attention to. And
if somebody gives me a like concrete action to do, I will usually do it.
Yeah.
Like if I hear about a like direct action that's happening,
yes,
I will usually do that. Or if I hear about people striking, I will you know, temporarily boycott whatever, you know, company workers are striking at, because that's a good thing to do. If somebody says I can't pay my rent, I will do my best to like spout them some cash, you know. I am less interested in like staying informed and more interested in taking action to help people and or make collective like engage in actions that like require collective cooperation when I know that they're happening. Like, I just don't see how me stressing out about Roe v. Wade getting overturned helps anybody.
Right, but there are a lot of people that will be like, you didn't hear about this, like, what you're not doing your civic duty to be like, to have this in your brain, because like we need to do something about this. But it sounds to me like you've already processed the fact that it's horrible and have accepted your level of ability to do anything about it.
Yeah. And so I do think that it's important to stay informed to the extent that you are able to without it like completely wrecking your mental health.
Yeah.
Or even a little bit wrecking your mental health.
And that looks different for everybody.
Yeah,
too.
and I think for me it looks like I pop into the internet from time to time and I'm just like, okay, what's happening? And then it's like everybody's screaming, it's a hellscape, and I'm like, oh, okay, great. And then I kind of just leave that where it is. For me, like, I do want to know about things like the potential for Roe v. Wade to be overturned. Like, I do want to know things about, like, the George Floyd protests, right? I do want to know things about what the heck we're going to do about climate change. And I do want to understand exactly what I'm capable of doing in terms of taking action on those issues. Yes. And a lot of the time, it's not a lot.
Right. And what I mean is, like, since you can't do too much yourself to influence the state of the situation, you don't have to feel like you're constantly updating yourself on any updates that come with the case, or like any decisions that are made. Like, you're not constantly checking social media, but some people will like pressure you to be doing that, you know? Like, let's stay on top of this because it's really important. And that's a valid consideration, but in reality it's doing little to help.
Yeah, it makes you feel more in control of a situation that is actually wildly beyond our control. At least as individuals. I think collectively it's a different story. But even that takes so much work and coordination and time and effort to affect things collectively.
Yes.
And I think that what happens is people feel like being informed gives them a sense of control over the situation because it's really scary. Mm-hmm. And I get that. And I also don't think that we should shame people for being informed.
No.
If you're informed and that's your thing and you are like the holder of knowledge and you are the one telling all your friends about what's going on, then that's great. I also don't think that we should shame people for not being as informed, you know?
Yeah. And I think that in my opinion, you should stay informed, but do it with intent.
Exactly.
That is, I think, the most important thing. Like, if you're going to stay updated on the state of Roe v. Wade, make sure you're doing it because you're actually it's going to affect you, and you're going to make decisions in your life based on what you're hearing.
Yeah.
And perhaps there's somebody in your life that you want to, you know, protect from the consequences of this case, and you need to stay informed so that you know what to do for them. I
also wanted to add that, like, staying informed, I think, has to be intentional, exactly like you were saying, in terms of not just accepting what the news is presenting you with as the important stuff.
Yeah.
Like, for example, I mean, just continuing with the Roe v. Wade stuff, that's an important issue. I would say that if you want to be informed about something, that might be a good thing to stay informed about, you know? Mm-hmm. And there's other things that dominate the news cycle that are not as important, that are very stressful. For example, the Dave Chappelle controversy.
Yes.
As a trans person, I don't give a shit about Dave Chappelle. I wish that I hadn't heard about what was going on because I don't care. I don't.
Yeah.
That might sound callous, and I think even some trans people might say, you know, like, well, this has a huge effect on our community, and, like, how could you not be informed? But to that, I say, stop, because I'm a trans person, and I cried when I read the transcript of his show. Mm-hmm. But I wish that I hadn't known that it existed, because it doesn't need to take up space in my brain.
Yeah.
And moreover, that sort of, like, process where the news will, like, grip onto something like that, right? Mm-hmm. And spew it out for, like, a week or two, and then just completely move on, you know, it's not helpful.
And, I mean, it's engineered to, you know, get people's attention, gain traffic, and gain them profit.
Right, exactly.
It's not engineered so that you can stay informed about the most important things and, you know, to actually make a difference about it.
Exactly. Like, and I do understand that, like, rhetoric can have an impact on people's day-to-day lives, right? Mm-hmm. But Dave Chappelle's rhetoric is nothing new.
Yeah.
You know? Not that he shouldn't be criticized for that, and if people want to stay informed about that issue, of course, like, I think that people should do as they please, right? Mm-hmm. But for me, it's like, okay, I'm just going to keep giving money to trans women in need, to black trans women especially, and, like, help them pay their fucking rent. You know? Like, mm-hmm. I would rather take the 5 minutes and give a cool-headed sum of cash to a trans woman that needs it than spend any amount of time or energy on Dave Chappelle.
Right, and it's a tricky trap. These issues that blow up in the news and in social media, because there's a fine line about there's a fine line between staying informed and actually giving the issue more attention than it actually deserves.
Right,
and
exactly.
This is what happens all the time with social media, is that things spiral out of control with people's responses to it. It blows up. Now it's in everybody's brains, yet nobody's actually taking any action towards it.
Right, exactly. Like, what came of blowing the Dave Chappelle thing up? I actually am not sure. I would have to look into that.
I mean, the reason that I looked into it originally is because there was a strike going on at Netflix, and people were boycotting Netflix.
Right.
You know, in solidarity with the producers and directors that were working at the company and didn't want to see that kind of content on the platform.
Right.
But I mean, a lot of people kind of just like said their piece about it and then continued to go about their daily routine.
Right.
And that's the kind of thing that is largely unhelpful.
Yeah, and you spent emotional and resources
it's
and your time.
Well.
Yeah.
Even though you may feel vindicated at having said your piece and condemning or not condemning the subject of this controversy.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really you're screaming into a vacuum chamber.
A vacuum chamber.
Or vacuum, just like an empty space where nobody can hear you.
I think that you were pulling from echo chamber.
A vacuum chamber.
Which, do you know what an echo chamber is? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that you just combined vacuum and echo chamber.
Maybe.
Vacuum chamber.
Yeah, it's a vacuum chamber.
Well, an echo chamber implies that there's
minting the term.
There's other people in an echo chamber who are of similar mind to you.
Right, yes. But it's not always similar minds when you're on you're on Twitter or whatever.
Right. Well, if it's a vacuum, it's empty.
Yeah, but empty as in there's no substance or meaning to it.
But somehow there's people.
I guess so.
I see.
You
heard it here
they've
first.
Been sucked up by the vacuum.
It's the vacuum chamber.
Oh my god.
Uh-oh, bud. It looks like you're in the vacuum chamber. Why don't you take a step back and think about what you're consuming from the news cycle?
You said it, not me.
So, in summary, stay informed to the extent that you are comfortable and able to, and that looks different for different people.
Mm-hmm.
And be conscious of what you are intaking. When you are watching or reading or seeing the news, ask yourself, what impact is this going to have on me? Both in terms of like, what impact is reading the news having on me? Mm-hmm. And then, does this issue actually affect me or people that I care about? Or people maybe that I should care about? I think that's a separate issue maybe we should talk about now. And ask yourself, is knowing about this, is the stress of this knowledge going to actually lead to like any, concrete outcome for me, right? And I think asking that is important for a couple reasons. One is because if there's nothing that you can do about an issue, then that might be a reason, if it's distressing for you, to maybe take a step back from it.
Yeah, and don't let anybody make you feel guilty for stepping away from an issue like that.
Exactly. But then the other reason that it's important to ask that is because sometimes if you are reading about social issues, it's really easy to feel good about ourselves for just staying informed. Mm-hmm. And then we don't end up taking any action.
Yes.
So I brought up like the George Floyd protests from before. And I think that issue, last summer, being in the news cycle for so long was really great because it raised awareness about racism in this country. But I have heard some, I guess, critiques of how all that went down that it was just another news cycle. I mean, it was extended. It went on for some time.
Yeah.
But it still fizzled out, you know?
Yeah.
And then B, it's great to be informed, but then it's another to actually turn that information into something concrete that you can do for people, you know, that you care about or should care about, right? So basically what I'm saying is, like, part of the reason that we need to ask ourselves that question is, like, for example, white people, like, reading about racism. It's like, that's great. And you might get distressed reading that stuff. Mm-hmm. But then, like, you might be able to volunteer in your community or do, like, educational work, right? Yeah. Or go to a direct action that's going to have way more of an impact. And that might not even be as distressing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You have to, like, balance these things. Like, stay informed, but don't just sit there and get upset at the news. You know, A, because it's making you upset, and B, because, like, ultimately the reason to stay informed is to affect change if you're able.
Yes, exactly.
Did I sum that up well?
Yeah, because if you're just reading about it and being upset about it as a white person, you are not doing anything to help the situation, and now you're upset.
Right, exactly. And it's like, okay, well, that's a net loss, you know? And I don't feel qualified to, like, speak on this issue in terms of, like, what white people, like, should necessarily do. I think that there are plenty of, like, black voices who have spoken on that issue. Maybe I can link some in the comments if you're really interested in that. But, like, so as a trans person, right, I would rather have, like, an uninformed cis person, like, going about their day and, like, mentoring, like, a queer youth, you know, and, like, talking to them and, like, helping them out, you know, or, like, fostering a queer youth than a cis person who was, like, totally on the up and up on all the issues and, like, shaming other cis people for not knowing enough about trans issues.
Yep.
You know what I mean? I personally, like, my own philosophy is, like, I care so much more about, like, direct impact and, like, actually taking steps to improve the situation, whether that's on an individual level or on a collective level. I think usually what happens is, like, if there is not already, like, something happening, like, it's hard to organize people collectively. And I think one way to, like, stay positive and, like, reclaim your sense of agency in this world of shit is to figure out what you can do, like, in your own community. Maybe get some people together on, like, a local level, you know? Like, I'm not saying you have to do everything alone, but, like, small change that is, like, actual concrete things that you're doing to help other people is, like, way better than you just getting upset at the news.
Yeah, and another asterisk to add on to this. It's not like we're saying that, like, you can't stay informed about these issues and read about these issues without immediately going out and doing something about it too. It's not like every time you read a book about racism, now you have to go to, like, a protest or, like, or, like, give reparations to somebody. No, it's if you just be real with yourself and let yourself process the information and feel the way you're going to feel about it, rather than just inhaling the information like you would information from a textbook, to just regurgitate it to somebody else. You actually want to let it, you know, affect you, and then be real with yourself about, okay, is this something that I want to do something about? Is this something that I'm going to change is this something that I'm going to take and turn into something else that I'm going to do?
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I feel like we started this conversation by saying, like, how to stay positive, like, asterisk.
I think it's gonna,
and we're going through all the asterisks.
I think it's gonna come back around, because the question is now, like, how do you do this all? How do you allow yourself to really sit in the negative emotions of all the horrid shit that's going on, and then still have a positive mentality as you're just going about your day?
Yeah, I think that, like...
Because, I mean, sorry to interrupt, but
no worries.
I think that the way that people deal with it is that people try to flip the issues on their heads, and they try to find reasons within the shitty issues that they see on the news, like, oh, at least so-and-so didn't happen, right? And that is toxic positivity. They're still talking about the issues and trivializing them.
Yeah.
Rather than accepting that, okay, this is happening and it's terrible. I'm going to be positive about the things that I can control, completely separate from these issues.
Yeah. For sure. And I think the difference between toxic positivity and, healthy positivity, I would say, is, like, for example, like, relating it to the issue of, like, the news, right? Like, if you are hearing about, to continue with the topic at hand, like, if you are hearing about some racist stuff going on, right? Toxic positivity is turning a blind eye to that, or victim blaming and saying, like, oh, well, like, it's probably, like, their fault because, like, they were doing, like, XYZ. And it's like, okay, that's toxic positivity. But a way to, like, handle that situation positively is to assess the situation, process it, and I think that's going to look different depending on, like, who's processing it, right? But I do think that, like, possibly controversial opinion, like, I do think that, like, when anybody hears, like, any kind of, like, distressing news, they need time to process it and handle it, even if the issue is, like, not related to their own identity. So figure out what you need to do to process it, figure out how to deal with it, and then find something good that you can do that's in your control. Like, for example, let's say you're a cis person and you hear about, like, the fact that, like, trans people kill ourselves all the time. Sorry, I probably should have done a trigger warning. Maybe I'll put a little trigger warning at this timestamp in the description. A good thing that you can do is, like, look up, like, communities or, like, organizations in your, like, area that are providing services to, like, trans youth, right? Or, like, maybe there's, like, a hotline that is, like, helping, like, prevent that stuff, right?
Or, like, even just, like, 5 things I can do to assist someone who may be feeling suicidal thoughts.
Exactly.
Or, like, specifically trans people.
Yeah, like, and I don't even think that you would have to make it about, like, trans people either.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, like...
Not even necessarily.
Yeah, just something to, like... Something to affect a positive change.
Yeah, write down the number to the suicide hotline.
Right.
And there, you have actively made yourself more prepared for a situation that might come your way in the real world instead of just sitting there and being, like, hopeless.
Yeah, and it takes, like, 2 seconds, And I think that there's, like, different levels of helping, too.
Yeah.
Like... You could put the number in your phone, you know what I mean? You could, like, share the number on social media so that, like, people have it or something.
Yeah.
Or you could, like, volunteer, Yeah. Or you could just, like, look into the resources that are in your area just to be aware of them and, like, start compiling, like, a list,
Yeah.
Or maybe somebody's already done that. I don't know. Like, but I think there's multiple ways to help.
Yeah.
And... The key thing is that toxic positivity has you turn a blind eye to all of this.
Yes.
And, maybe you're really good at tuning it all out, but it's not going to make you feel better. In the long run, it's not going to make you feel better. Actual healthy positivity acknowledges these issues, chooses to engage with them in a way that isn't, like, self-harm and, like, isn't...
dismissiveness.
Right, exactly. So, like, it's not even just that it's not dismissiveness, it's that it's, you're acknowledging the issue and then you're engaging with it in in a way that isn't self-harm for you.
Yes.
Like, because sometimes, even if there's an issue that's important and that we want to, like, stay informed about, just like we were talking about, toxic positivity has you strike a balance. Oh, I'm sorry. Healthy positivity helps you strike a balance between not turning a blind eye, but then also not engaging in this, like, weird form of self-harm where you're like, I have to stay informed, I have to stay informed, I have to stay informed, and you're, like, just stressing yourself with, like, too much,
Yeah.
Healthy positivity helps you engage and stay informed in the right way, and then recenter yourself and take even just a tiny little action that grounds you in helping other people, you know? Yeah.
Yep. And it doesn't even have to be something physical. It can just be like, I am going to talk with my friend who I know that these issues affect more than they affect me personally, and be like, what can I do for you?
Yes. Although I feel like I should warn that, like, for example, if you hear about something that's distressing to trans people, don't go to your trans friend and be like, oh my gosh, I heard about this, and like, I just want to know what I can do.
Yeah, that's a very, like, I mean, not something that affects them so indirectly. Like,
right.
if you have somebody that's directly affected by something, like, there's something bad going on in their neighborhood.
Right, yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. Or, like, even if somebody, I think, like, cares especially about an issue, like, if somebody really cares about, like, animal welfare or something, and you hear about, like, something going on in your community where, I don't know, maybe you have, like, a stray cat problem, and you're like, oh gosh, like, my friend Joshua, like, knows all about stray cats and all about this issue. Exactly. I'm gonna give him a ring.
That's what I meant.
Yeah. Yeah, that stuff is good.
Don't make the the clueless dad mistake of you're like, hey, I know that you're like I know that you're trans. Here's all the trans issues that I've recently heard about in the last week.
Like, you'd be surprised the amount of, like, trans news that I get just, like, messaged to me.
Yeah.
Because people are like, oh, this is relevant to you. And I'm like, not really.
Yeah.
Like, the whole Elliot Page thing, I was like, great. I don't care. Like,
yeah. I
mean, and maybe, again, I feel like that sounds callous, but I'm like, I don't keep up with celebrities. Wonderful. I'm so glad that, you know, he's out and proud and, like, doing his thing. But it's also, like, I do not interact with Elliot Page on a day-to-day basis. Like, I do not, like, you know... I mean, I guess it's good because now I can refer to him with the right pronouns, but I feel like I would have figured that out without being sent, like, 7 copies of the same article, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, if you were an Elliot Page fan, it'd be different.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, if I was, like... Elliot Page, like, #1 stan, then maybe I would need to know, because then maybe I would, like, be keeping up with the pages, you know. Turning the pages of the story of pain. Okay, I'm done. I feel like we're talking about a lot of sensitive issues here, you know?
I think this is a hot, spicy episode.
It is a spicy episode.
That may even be a little controversial.
Yeah,
among some.
I think it is controversial because it's like, I mean, we're living it. We're living in the zeitgeist, and we are faced with a lot of really troublesome stuff, you know?
Yeah.
We're faced with oppression. We're faced with climate change. We're faced with, like, technology and like, the future of, like, work and labor.
Yep.
And we're faced with this entire panini still, which is like, I feel it's not news, but it's like still here. And I'm like, wow, I guess I'm just losing like the last 2 years of my 20s to this. I say last 2 years of my 20s, not because I'm at the end of my 20s, but because it's like the last 2 years, like the previous 2 years. Yeah.
Most recent 2 years.
So point being, like, we're facing some burdensome stuff. Some burdensome, troublesome stuff. Some
burdensome birds.
Yeah. Whoa. Those birds are really burdensome.
Yeah, and I mean, it's important, I think, now more than ever, to just, like, be as positive as you possibly can, because your state of mind has such a big impact in what you're going to be able to do about it all.
Yes.
You're not feeling well, then you're not going to have a foundation for moving forward in a positive direction.
Exactly. Yeah, and not only that, like, but your joy does not have to serve anything else. You don't have to just feel joyful in order to continue fighting the good fight. That's something that I had to, like, really learn. Like, when I you know, a couple years ago, I was really involved in, like, activist work.
Yeah.
I was involved in spaces where, you know, how do I put this? When there was an issue, we were on it.
Right.
Or we were trying to figure out how to get on it. And it was exhausting. And one of the things that people would say, because we didn't want people burning out, obviously,
Yeah.
but one of the things we would say is like, okay, you need to take care of yourself so that you can keep working.
Yes.
And it's like, that's true, but then you also need to take care of yourself for your own sake. Like, even if you are taking care of yourself so that you can sit back in the jacuzzi and drink a martini and not get back to work,
Yeah.
then great. Like, be joyful, you know? Like, just enjoy being human. If you have a moment to, like, bless you, like, take it, seize it, you know?
Looking out for yourself first, primarily, is not actually as selfish an act as some may make it out to be, is because the better that you are feeling about yourself and your situation, the more positive impact you're going to have on others too. That's the best thing that you can do for others, is be the best version of yourself that you can be.
But I'm saying that even if you're not going to use your best self to help others, that it's still valuable to have a more joyful and enjoyable experience.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, as long as you're not being a dick to anybody.
Right, exactly. And I think that what people could stand to embrace a little more is that, like, doing nice things for yourself, not for the sake of recovering from burnout so that you can keep working or fighting or working on, like, social issues, is okay. Like, you do not just exist to serve other people. We're social creatures, yeah, but, like, you are here also to enjoy your own experience. And, like, it's okay if not everything is about helping other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I say that because I mean, I think I understand where you're coming from, because, like, you don't want to be so selfish that you are, I don't know, hoarding billions of dollars in wealth and causing massive destruction to the planet.
People
but, like,
do that?
Well, I can think of one person. A couple people, probably, actually. But, like, I think that we make this, like, false equivalency between, like, people who are financially comfortable, or, like, who are getting to be financially comfortable, especially, like, at our age.
Yeah.
Like, sitting back in a warm bath, like, having, like, a glass of wine or something. Like, that is not Jeffrey Bezos. Like, you are a 20-something sitting in your bath, relaxing. Like, it is okay. And it's okay to enjoy that. And, like, it can just be about you. Like, it can just be about you enjoying and seizing the opportunity that you have to, like, enjoy the human experience, because, like, god damn it, like, we have such limited time and there is so much shit going on and so much of it is awful that if you find yourself in a position, even if it's small, you know what I mean, to, like, seize a moment of beauty and joy and, like, something nice in your life, then I hope that no matter who you are, like, you take that.
Yes.
And you, like, enjoy the fuck out of it. That's healthy positivity.
Yeah.
You know?
Your essential oil diffuser is not contributing a statistically significant amount to climate change.
Wow, I actually think I needed to hear that.
Yeah.
And isn't that so funny? Because, like, I think that, you know, we put a lot of, well, some people, I think, put a lot of pressure on ourselves to, like, be good. Like, I think about that all the time. Like, I think every time I buy something that's plastic, like, if I buy, like, produce at the grocery store that's in plastic, I'm like, oh my god. Like, it's in plastic. And obviously, that's not good, but it's like, hey, man, I can only do so much. I want some strawberries.
Yeah.
You know?
Strawberries don't come in glass jars in the grocery store.
I mean, I think you could get, like, canned strawberries, but I don't want canned
strawberries.
Canned strawberries.
If you like canned strawberries, let us know in the comments.
And it's like, hey, if you are gonna feel guilty about buying plastic, like, if you're gonna feel guilty about buying produce in plastic, then I would encourage you to stop feeling guilty about that. Go research what you can do about plastic, right? In general. See
That's
if you can get involved, right? And forgive yourself for buying plastic at the grocery store, because that is not, that, you feeling bad about that is not going to actually impact anything, right? And it would be so much more worth your time for you to go into the grocery store and not feel bad at all for getting all the produce you want and all that you need to feed your body, you know? and get the stuff in plastic, because it's all in plastic, you know? And then go home and say, gosh, there's so much plastic. What can I do, you know, about this issue? Because I guarantee you'll be able to find something.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And it doesn't even have to be about any issue. Like, I could give an example of something that I do in my day-to-day life to, like, ground myself in like, a positive impact on people.
Sure.
So I feel that given the level of, like, financial comfort that I have, that I want to share that with people in need. So it's not much, but, like, every month I have budgeted, I'm prepared, I have money reserved to give to other people. A certain amount of money. And I tell myself, like, if I come across somebody, you know, I try to carry singles now also, so if I come across somebody, like, begging for food or money, I have something to give them, and I'll give them, like, you know, a couple dollars, or, like, sometimes just, like, what I have in my wallet, because I'm like, I know I've budgeted for this, right? Or if I see, like, a fundraiser or something, or, like, somebody needs help, like, supporting, like, a medical treatment, or somebody needs help, like, paying rent, like, I just give it to them. And because I've, like, budgeted for this and I've, like, financially planned, like, it's not as big of a deal. And I know that's not going to be for everybody, but, like, for people who are, you know, comfortable enough, even if it's just, like, a little bit, you know what I mean? Because, like, what I give, like, is not that much, but it's, like, something that I can do every month and say, like, I'm helping these people, you know? Like, I am setting aside some of my resources to, like, help other people, and it has to go to them. Like, I don't touch that money myself. Yeah. So
that's good stuff.
Yeah. And every time, like, I mean, now, especially now that we're living in Pittsburgh, like, there have been times when it's been, like, good that I was carrying singles, because there's, like, people who are just, like, out. And, like, on, like, an aside also, like, I don't even care, like, what they spend it on, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I just hope that they can keep themselves warm and not miserable, you know?
Yeah.
I hope that they will buy food, you know? But I also wouldn't judge them for buying something else. And, like, people can sometimes people will look, like, so happy when I give them, like, more than just a few dollars, you know? And it's, like, that makes me feel good. Like, that feels good to help another human being.
Yep.
You know? Yeah. And I know there's going to be people out there who are like, they're just going to spend it on drugs. But, you know, maybe they're not. You know? And, like, I get paid for my job, and you know, when I was working, my job didn't ask me if I was going to spend the money on drugs. You know? They're still people just like us. Like...
Well put.
Yeah. So just finding, like, little ways to, like, ground yourself like that is, I think, the way to go. You know? I feel like we started this episode off on, like, a really controversial note by saying, like, don't read the news if you don't want to.
Hey,
know?
That's the way, you know? You start off with the really spicy hot take, and then you clarify later, after they've already consumed the content.
Yeah, well, I hope that you've enjoyed this content.
Yeah, we try to make good content.
Yeah.
We try to make content that doesn't make people feel shitty or like they've wasted their time.
Yeah, I hope you haven't wasted your time by being here. And if you feel like you've wasted your time...
let us know in the comments.
Send us a mean email about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would actually be so excited to read your thoughts on how our episodes sucked.
Yeah, actually, that would be great.
How can we improve?
Yeah, we get, like, no mail.
Yeah. And if our show is sitting at a cool 0 emails per month.
Well, you get a couple emails, but it's all, like, business stuff. It's all, like, you know, your episode has successfully uploaded.
Automated emails don't count.
Yeah.
I'm talking about fan mail, baby.
Actually, sometimes my aunt sends us fan mail. Yeah.
Thank you, Winter's aunt.
Yeah, she's pretty great. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you to everybody who watches our show and engages with it.
Yeah, I hope that you've enjoyed this episode, and that you really take this message to heart, you know, and just be kind to yourself and kind to other people in a way that isn't toxically positive, but that isn't also toxically negative. Yes. Find a happy balance and work with that.
Yeah. And stay cute.
Stay cute.
Peace.